I think it was last week, Chris, we started our podcast by saying, we should be back into the regular season of the Ontario Hockey League. You remember that February the 4th date?
Yes.
And as we get things going this week, word in the ether is a 24-game schedule beginning sometime in April. 4 hub cities, 2 of which might be Niagara and Kingston. There would have to be one up north, say the Sioux. So where would the 4th one go? Who knows? These are all just the rumors, but this is where we're at as you and I continue sharing these stories.
Yeah, we don't normally go too in depth with rumors. You and I, we kind of wait till we know all the facts. But right now, there are no facts and there is no season, so why not talk about the rumors? I wouldn't be surprised if it is that type of schedule, like we talked about in the past, that the WHL is doing. I like the idea of 4 hub cities. I still think there is some question marks of whether you can tell 16 to 20-year-olds, hey, you're in another city, don't go out to a restaurant. Are they going to be able to? Are they just going to lock them in a hotel room? Are you going to have 4 teams in a hotel altogether? There's a lot of things logistically that need to be figured out. I think that's probably just one plan of maybe 3 or 4 that the OHL has presented to the provincial government. And we haven't even talked about whether there will be hitting, because Lord knows our Minister of Sport came out previously and said that there won't be body contact if the OHL gets going. So who really knows? No one at this point. I hope they just get something figured out so we can get back to watch hockey. But even obviously on a more personal level, you and I, what does that mean for broadcasters? Are you going to have visiting broadcasters going into that rink every day? Probably not. Are you going to have that home radio station just broadcasting all the games? Is it going to be no audio and just streamed on the internet? Who knows?
And one of the other things that comes into play that you haven't mentioned yet is fans, of which I don't think there would be any. We're certainly not at a place here in Ontario where we have even capacity limits based on percentage of capacity. And without fans, you talked about the Minister of Sport and body contact, but what about probably the Treasury Board or the Ministry of Finance, somewhere in the provincial government, to say, how about some financial support to make the league viable, even at a drastically reduced 24-game schedule? Look, the easy thing to say for a couple of guys who, miss broadcasting the games, sure. Is it keeping a little cash out of our pockets? Absolutely. But the easiest thing to say is, you know what, September, that's when we're still all told here in Canada that those of us who want to have the vaccines will have had them. We'll be in a much better place, one would assume, once the high percentage of the population has been vaccinated. That's when the OHL season usually gets started. So let's just close the books completely on 2020, 2021, and start fresh in September. 68-game schedule, vaccinated fans in the buildings, and so on and so forth. But that overlooks the importance of this season and any kind of a season to the players themselves.
I can't hear you or see you. I'm having some technical difficulties over here. There we go. We're back working. Go. Okay, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. That's okay. This is Zoom life, working from home.
That's right.
I get the financial thing for sure, right? And that needs to be figured out, and that's the bigger picture. I don't think, I can't envision a world where there's any fans, especially with the provincial government coming out and even saying, like, when it comes to restaurants with their new color-coded system now after the second lockdown, that even if you go into green, a max at a restaurant is 50 people. It used to be, like 50% or 70% of your capacity. Now it's right across the line. It's 50 people in a restaurant. So I can't imagine that they'd make an exception to stick everyone in a hockey arena.
I just don't know what it means to the players if even the shortened season gets scrapped in all of this, right? Like I feel for these 16, 17, 18-year-old kids whose next step in hockey is dependent on this step.
And I mean, I should have looked this up, but what does it mean to those players? Like, for instance, like a Francesco Pinelli who went overseas to play. Does he come back for that 25 game? Like, is he technically under contract with the Rangers and they lent him to that team? I don't know how that would work, but definitely that's much in the future. They got to figure out how they're going to have a season even to begin with. You started off this podcast. I was going to ask you, you've seen The Breakfast Club, right?
Of course.
Did you see it in theaters? It was out
Actually, no.
36 years ago today. That's why I
I
brought it up. I was just going to make fun of you that you're old.
I am, but I actually did not. That would have been, if it was 36 years ago today, that makes me just under the limit. At the time, it would have been a AA adult accompaniment movie. So you had to be 14 or older to go see that without adult accompaniment. And I do not recall my parents or my friends' parents taking me to see The Breakfast Club. I saw it on the old VHS, Poper.
Nice. I was about 3 months away from being made. Born in January of 86. So,
but does Barry Manilow know you rated his wardrobe?
You like it?
No, it's just one of the lines, one of the best lines from the movie, as far as I'm concerned.
I don't know. I think I saw it. It was probably like 10 years ago. My parents, well, maybe more than that, probably about 20 years ago, my parents had a VHS. So I probably watched it on some Sunday afternoon.
It's great soundtrack.
Emilio, right?
Emilio, Judd Nelson, Molly Ringwald, Anthony Michael Hall, and Ali Sheedy.
When we were talking about things to talk about during this preamble to our guest this week, there wasn't really a lot going on in the league, and we tend to find some things to bring up. But I did want to bring up the Rangers announced today that on March 8th, they're having that Women in Hockey Conference. If you're a woman who listens to this podcast, join it. You can find a link on their website. They have, I think, about 13 guests signed up, women that are in hockey at all various different levels. It looks like it could be something really special. I wanted to join it, but I thought I'd wait a little while because I don't know if is it wrong, but I don't want to take a spot of an aspiring woman who wants to get in the game because there's only a limited amount of spots available. And I didn't want to take someone's spot, but I'm very interested in seeing it. I hope they post like a YouTube link afterwards for this conference so we can go back and watch.
Leave it to the Kitchener Rangers to mow our grass, and leave it to me to never pass up an opportunity for a shameless plug. You and I have already discussed at a future podcast, we are going to be bringing in some of the women in the game today that would have been part of a Rogers event back when we were playing hockey. There are many talented women working in the Ontario Hockey League today. We see them when we go from city to city and rink to rink, and we want to get a panel of them onto this podcast. We also want to talk about one of the originals in Sanaya Saperji, who was a writer that I was following incredibly closely in my earliest days in the league, just for information, because she was so well connected and she blazed a trail for sure.
Same. I used to love Sanaya. Yeah. What was their Yahoo blog? Do you remember the junior one? What was it called?
There was
the Crease or.
Ooh, yeah, something Crease. And then she and Terry Doyle were behind the Loose Pucks blog for a long time too.
Yeah. And they were all over stuff.
Yeah.
Like trade wins before there were any trade talks on Twitter. They knew everything before it happened. They were fantastic. I remember reading that blog frequently.
We have a couple of great guests to get to today, and I know there will be laughs. There might even be tears from all of the laughing coming up, but just one more on the shameless plug point. We now have an Instagram page. So if you're already following on Facebook, awesome. OHL Stories podcast with Farwell and Pope. Chris on Twitter @_ Chris Pope, or me @Farwell_OHL. Our email address, farwellandpope@gmail.com. And now, bang, it's like it's 2021 or something. OHL Stories on Instagram as well. Trying to keep you up to date in all of the various channels.
Absolutely. And depending on how you take in your podcasts, it's on Spotify, Apple iTunes. And if you don't have a smartphone, or you just don't like listening to our voices and you want to see our faces, we're also on YouTube. OHL Stories on there. You can find it on all of our socials and stuff. And let us know what you think one way or another. Enough from us. Let's get to some OHL stories from a pair of brothers hailing from Elmira. I know way too much about both of them to do a long intro because they're both my uncles. Steve Parson once held the record for most games played in the Ontario Hockey League. We always joke that that's the record you don't want, but was close to signing with the Ottawa Senators. And then the lockout happened right then. His brother Mike played for the Guelph Platers and Owen Sound Platers before being drafted in the second round to the Boston Bruins. I didn't bring it up in the podcast, but he was taken ahead of a couple guys, Vladimir Konstantinov, Pavel Bure, and Sergei Fedorov. They went on to do a little bit more than Mike did, but he still won two Calder Cups, one with Portland and one with Maine, I believe. Steve won a couple championships, South Carolina Stingrays and Thunder Bay Senators, but this is full of a barrel of laughs from a couple storytellers, Mike and Steve Parson.
You know, as Don Cameron liked to say, there are no ties anymore in hockey. They got rid of the ties. But on this episode of OHL Stories, there are some family ties.
Farzy, I often sometimes think that we should record the preamble to a podcast because we get some good stuff while we're trying to connect. We got two brothers here from Elmira finally connected, Mike and Steve Parson. Thanks a lot for doing this, guys.
My pleasure. Thanks for having us.
My pleasure as well, Christopher and Mike.
Are you
going to tell the story of how you know us?
Yeah, I was going to say, really had to
story. Yeah,
really had to go deep into the Rolodex on this one. At one point, both these individuals saw me naked. In fact, they helped wipe my butt. These two individuals, both my uncles, my mother is their sister. I'm sure she will like how I worded that, given her childhood growing up in Elmira with these two playing hockey all the way up. She was always their sister, so I'm sure she likes that. Growing up in Elmira, both you guys got to play for the Sugar Kings. What was that like?
Go ahead, Mike. You're first.
Well, I absolutely loved it. I have the best set of guys on the team ever. A guy named Randy Pierce and I were the only 16-year-olds that made that team, and we had a great group of guys. There were so many of them. My goalie partner, Michael Kavelman, and Dave Smith, Bill Lang, Dean Turgeon, just a great group of guys. But I have to talk mostly about the coach, Jerry Foiler, because I've never been so scared of a man in my life. When I first tried out there and played there, but now we've ended up being best friends. We talk old stories and stuff like that. So it's great to talk to him, but I had the most amazing time of my life that year.
Steve, you were just 15, weren't you?
Yes, I remember going to training camp in a friend of mine's Chevette. It was a John Kreitzer. It was him and I and Chad Bish. We basically said, let's go play some pond hockey. And we show up and we roll out of this Chevette with 3 bags of hockey equipment. John was a goaltender. And we had no idea what we were getting into. We just basically were bored and we want to go play hockey. So we show up and I remember Gary Schaefer, a good friend of my dad's, he worked for them at Unirealm, and he grabbed my nose and he said, "You're not coming in to play for us, are you?" And I said, "I'm going to give it a shot, Gary." He says, "Well, you better be able to drop your gloves." And I went, "Damn." So I looked across the dressing room and I saw a guy by the name of Craig Majuri and Dean Derrigan. They were both 19, 20-year-olds, and I'm 15, and they got hair all over their body. And I'm like, I'm in the wrong business right now. Like, I don't have any hair in my body at all. Anyway, we get on the ice, and I think I got clocked in the warm-up by my own teammate because everything was happening so fast. But by the end of the first scrimmage, I think I got into a scrap, and I did okay. I didn't do that well, but I survived. And Ray Kuntz, the coach, came up to me and says, "Can you do that all season long?" I said, "I don't know." And my dad was standing in the corner, and he was giving me the thumbs up. And I said, "Well, if it makes him happy, I think possible." So that's how it all started in Elmira with the Sugar Kings.
You know, Mike, it's funny you talk about the relationship that you form later in life with Jerry. We had Joe McDonnell on a recent podcast talking about his relationship as a player under Orville Tessier. And then when they would drive to scouting assignments together years later, and Joe would be like, "You know, when I played for you, I hated your guts," but they became good friends later on.
Well, I definitely didn't hate Jerry at all. I was just so scared of him. I mean, I was like, he was so stern and strict, and minor hockey isn't like that. Like I had Herb Townsend, Bob Waters, Brad Rao, I can go on, Dale Martin, Miller Hicks. And they were always so nice. And, no matter how poorly you might've played or no matter what the results were, they always high fives. And not Jerry, gave you a look, but it actually made you realize that you're no longer just playing the game for fun. You still are, but to play at that level, you must have to take a lot more serious. And I remember Kevin Block was a defenseman on my team, who I'm good friends with now too. Same with Dave Smith. Those were the two guys that mostly took me under their wing. But so Dave is, coaching Division I hockey over there in Albany, New York, and Kevin's still with the Sugar Kings. But I remember Kevin, a few of the times I'd get hit with a puck and I was like, damn, that shot hurt, because he had the worst equipment. And the next thing you know is Kevin was freaking doing everything possible to block every shot. I didn't even need to wear equipment. Like he was flopping all over the place, and it's neat. We talk about that now.
So you guys make it to the OHL, Mike. You started in Guelph with the Platers, and then when they moved to Owen Sound for the first year, not only are you moving up to Owen Sound, but you have your younger brother joining the team as well. How tough was that?
Well, actually, I was pretty excited. Let me take a step back. I wasn't excited about leaving Guelph to go to Owen Sound because, I had a girlfriend who is now my wife there. And, it's just something new. But Owen Sound, the fans were fantastic. My billet lady, Hilda Aberdeen, was amazing. And Ray McKelvey was fantastic up there. But when my brother was drafted up there, I was pretty pumped, but I was like, oh God, I'm not sure if it's the best thing for him, because he knew pretty much the whole team already. And, I really believe in that you need to pay your dues a little bit and stuff. And, to sum it up, I wasn't the best brother that my last year and his first year. And Steve knows that. I don't know if I've ever apologized, but our teammates sure do. But looking back, I'm actually glad we got to play with each other for a year. And later on we played against each other, but I don't know if I was the best brother for him when we played together up in Owen Sound. I know I was not.
So Steve, what's it like from your perspective? Yeah, the other side of that same story.
Well, you know what? I remember going to Toronto into the arena to get to the OHL draft. And I'm sitting in the stands with my dad, my mom, and my sister, and my whole family. And all of a sudden, Rob Holiday, the owner of the team, the general manager, goes up to the podium and he goes, "From Elmira, Ontario, we take 6 foot, 175 pounds, Steve Parson." And I went, damn, it's going to be a long year. I mean, I don't get along with my brother prior to this because brothers don't sometimes. And, and I was playing in Elmira, the Sugar Kings, and he was in Guelph playing for the Platers. And he just got drafted to the Boston Bruins in the second round. So I'm thinking, and in the summertime, I think we had a good couple scraps in our house in Elmira.
Was that the summer we had that big fight?
Yeah, you choked me out a couple of times, made me tap out, but that's fine. Anyway, long story short, I go, it's going to be a long year. And then I'm in Guelph, and Ron Smith was the coach at the time, but they had a really good team, good group of guys. And then all of a sudden, Rob Holiday moved the team to Owen Sound, and I went, because I could have lived at home. I could have called on my mom or dad if my brother was beating me up on picking me up or whatever, picking on me. Anyway, we get to Owen Sound, and I got no car. I'm living with Trent Call. He's the first round pick. I'm the second round pick. Kirk Bumpy, he was a terrible hockey player, as everybody knows. He was a fourth round pick. And we're all rookies, and we get abused pretty good. It's not like what they're talking about in the newspapers and that stuff. But I mean, we get picked on, but it was fun. Long story short, we had a great year as far as fun. We lost against Keith Primo and Brad May in the quarterfinals, and then they went on to play the Rangers, Kitchener Rangers. But we had a great team. We just we lost Jeff Christian and
didn't have a coach.
We got no coach by George Burnett. But anyway, long story short, it was a great year, and it was a pleasure to play with Mike. And our bond, we didn't like each other that much that year, but we built a bond that was good, and so we were happy. And then he moved on to Boston the next season, and I stayed in Owen Sound and had a terrible season. But keep going.
That was the coach that you mentioned. Was that Len McNamara?
Yes. He is a nice guy, but I think he was just a little bit over his head that first year as a head coach.
So I'll tell you, again, Todd Hunter was my goalie partner. I'll just tell you this little story. And one game, I think I let in 3 goals in the first 5 minutes of the game, and Len went to pull me, and Todd skates to the crease, and I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, you're supposed to go out." And I go, "No, I'm not." I said, "Back to the bench." And then he went to the bench, and I guess Len sent them to me again. I go, no, I'm not leaving. Like, and again, I can't remember how many times it took place, but I had a, I hated being pulled because I had a philosophy, and I had this philosophy when I was coaching goalies in Guelph for the Storm. But if you piss your bed, you got to sleep in it. Do you know what I mean? Don't give the goalie, like, if you want to pull the goalie for a shift, go ahead, but throw him back in. He's got to freaking clean up that mess and be a wall now to give his team a chance. But I just remember that story. And Todd was a rookie that year, and Todd's a great guy. And I felt like, I remember looking back going, oh my God, I can't believe I did that to that kid, the young kid. No, go, and he's coming. I'm putting back at the bench, and he's like, what am I supposed to do? And Jeff Ballantyne was on our team. He was one of our overages. He's like, Parsh, what are you doing? I go, I'm not getting out of this net. So I remember he went over to Hunter, and something happened, and so he went back on the bench. And I do remember we ended up winning. I think it was 6-4. I think that was that game. It's funny how you remember some things, but I was like you're talking to yourself, because that's what goalies do, as you know that, Christopher.
Yep.
And I was like, you're embarrassing yourself and all this stuff. Freaking what the heck is going on? The freaking puck doesn't move that fast. And but it was a good story.
Steve, when you two are growing up, did you see this same determination in your older brother? And based on that, how much fun was it for you to be able to score against him? Because obviously only one of you is the goalie here.
Yeah, I remember, like, when we lived in Elmira, I mean, we didn't have computers, cell phones, all that stuff in your bedroom like kids do today in TV. So when we weren't in school, we were outside playing road hockey or soccer 100% of the time. And nobody wanted to play net, so Mike played net. We played road hockey. We always had great road hockey games, and that's what we did as kids. And then when Mike played minor hockey in Woolwich, and I followed up and watching him play out there, and watching my sister and my mom and my dad, the passion they had to cheer him on, and I got that excitement. So my parents put me on skates right away. And when you're in the Woolwich minor hockey system, playing in Woolwich or Elmira and St. Jacobs, and being on the ice and making friends, and parents are making friends. I mean, we have so many friends that are with us today and have passed away, but we have so many friendships from minor hockey and soccer that are going to last forever. And I think if I had children, they would be playing soccer and hockey, and or baseball, or whatever the case may be, because that's where you build friendships outside of school. And that brings you into competitive hockey and junior B, and I made some great friends there. Obviously, Rob Waters, Cam Stewart, Jamie Israel, Doug Hura, Steve Schaefer. I mean, we don't see each other a lot, but those memories and those friendships last forever. So that's where it all starts, and I think it's great for kids to do that.
We talked about that year that you went up to Owen Sound. I'm told there was a incident at prom leading up to it.
Yes. Well, I was playing for the Sugar Kings, and it was the off season, and Keith Whitmore,
who was my closest friend on the team.
And Keith Whitmore lives in Sudbury, but he couldn't make it down for his to be with his girlfriend for the prom in Guelph. Well, so Mike said, well, we're kind of stuck. His girlfriend didn't want to go alone. And Keith knew me just from being a fan. So Keith said, will you take my girlfriend to the prom? And I said, sure, whatever. So anyway, I go to Guelph with my brother, and we, we're just having a couple beers, and, just prior to the prom. Well, I didn't really have any beers when I was that age. So I didn't end up making it to the prom. So she ended up going by herself, which my buddy Keith asked me to take her. And long story short, so then I'd get drafted to the team, to the players. And then all of a sudden it starts, these stories come out. And it was just a fun way to break the ice when I got drafted by the Guelph Platers. And then Keith picked on me all season long. Then Keith and I ended up living together in Owen Sound. So I never went away. And we're still good friends today. And he lives in Flint, Michigan. And anyway, lots of good fun and good stories.
So Steve, you have to tell them though, you came to the Plater pre-prom party, so all the players were there.
Yes.
And that was the thing and Steve drank more than I did that night.
I think I had 2.
Yeah, and so I probably had none.
That's right.
So it was funny because he's fitting in, like, again, if you ever want I wasn't much of a drinker. I was more the one that kind of took care of everybody. So, but Steve was having a few, and he was just like 15 or whatever, 16, whatever age you were at the time. And, but he was partying with all the guys. Meanwhile, I'm just sitting back going, my brother's having more fun. He fits in better with the team at the parties than I do, because I never did.
And I was hoping, you know what, I'll see these guys once a year. I'll probably play in the Leyden division and probably be out, in Cornwall or something like that. Big deal, right? I end up getting drafted by them. I'm with them all the time. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. So they
that's for worst case scenario.
They thought Steve was a party animal from day one, and he pretty much was.
Well, have you ever seen Slapshot? No, I'm just kidding. But
I do have to tell you this though. When Steve and I were growing up, we lived in a townhouse in on Flamingo, and Robbie Grind was down the road or down the hall. But we would have the whole neighborhood would get together, and there'd be like 20 guys playing road hockey. And so Steve always had the most skill of any of the guys. Like, he'd put them through the ball through people's feet, jump around them and everything like that. And that's how he also was in soccer too. When we had our soccer games, this guy, I freaking hated him. Excuse my language. I don't mean to be that hard, but I just had determination. But Steve had all the skills in soccer and in hockey. And Steve used to like freaking do these fancy moves and turn me inside out. And then in soccer, he would do the same. So when we played together up in Owen Sound, I made sure I always did this anyways with whoever it was, but I always knew where Steve was on the ice in case he was going to get a shot away or might get a pass, because I never wanted him to score. Because I had to get him back for all the younger days when he turned me inside out all the time. So it was just a lot of fun living in Birdland in Elmira playing road hockey. And then we remember our Uncle Dave, who got me my first pads, but we had a parking lot where the cars would be parked beside each other, and our car would be missing. So we'd put the net there, and Steve would take shots on me, and the ball would bang off of cars, our neighbors. And Billy Rhodes, I went to his daughter Leanne was my age. I mean, his car took a beating, but never complained. Like, nowadays, if somebody hit a hard tennis ball or an orange ball off my car in the middle of winter, I wouldn't be very happy. But this guy was a phenomenal neighbor. Remember that, Steve?
Yes, I do. And I remember, but those are a lot of fun. And then obviously Mike went on after Owen Sound. He went on to the Boston organization, and I stayed in Owen Sound. And Mike has some good stories about that organization. Mike, I'm sure.
I want to get to that, but before we do, because it's been mentioned a couple of times, in Boston Bruins around that era, there are some names over there, Mike. But real quick, Steve, who were you admiring as a hockey player as you developed these skills? There had to be somebody you're watching, maybe his kid named Gretzky. I don't know. But
yeah, obviously, I think Daryl Sittler, Toronto Maple Leaf, St. Jacobs boy. He was, he was kind of my idol. But obviously, Wayne Gretzky was another big idol of mine because he was a little younger. And then, I looked up to obviously anybody older than me that came out of Elmira hockey, like Rick Sealing or Randy Pierce was playing at that time, Cam Stewart. I mean, these guys were all older than me that were playing in Elmira. And, I always, so I was looked up to those guys. And then when I got out of junior B to the junior A level, then it became another level of skill and passion and big guys. And, playing against guys like Keith Primo and Owen Nolan, night in, night out at 15, 16 years old. Yeah, my eyes wide and opened up and go, holy cow. Like, I played against, with Kitchener had a great team. They had Shane Stevenson, Stephen Rice, a bunch of great hockey players. And you realize how not good you are at that level when you jump up that, that quickly. Like when you guys are 3 years, 4 years older than you, but you got to grow up quick, and you got to work hard. And you realize that real quick. But obviously Daryl Sittler from the St. Jacobs area was my biggest idol.
Mike, I'm told you didn't always used to sign your name Michael Parson. Did you used to switch up that last name?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, our dad was a Montreal Canadiens fan, so I became a non-Montreal Canadiens fan just to get him going. So Toronto was my team, and Mike Palmetier was my idol. I mean, we used to play on Sundays. So on Saturday night, if he went out to the blue line to poke check someone, I made sure I did that on Sundays, just so I did it because he did it. And he used to say that he ate popcorn between periods. Well, then I started eating popcorn, like just not between periods, but you don't have that in minor hockey. But Mike Palmetier was my idol, and I had the pleasure of meeting him when I was the goalie coach of the Guelph Storm. And I didn't realize how short of a guy he was. But I'm telling you, I told him I loved watching you. And the other thing was the other guy I loved was Johnny Bauer. I went to his hockey school twice, and that's a class act gentleman right there too. I mean, I even ran into him up in Kawartha at the Buckhorn country store there, where they do have some great baking. Just to let you know, if you want to put on some weight.
Weird that you know how their baking is, eh?
Yeah. And he was signing his book, and I sat down with him for like 25 minutes and just talked to him. And he remembered everything about me when I went to his school, and his daughter, Cindy Bauer, the power skating. It was a great, some great stories. It's funny now that you're older, you look back and appreciate the things you did a lot more, or you did a lot more now than you did during that time.
It's interesting, Mike, because with a father who's a Habs fan, you cheer for the Leafs, and then to go back to being drafted by Boston, it's perfect for you in that regard.
It was just a pot. Yeah, oh my God.
A second rounder though, and that's a storied organization.
Yeah, no. I mean, I owe a lot to Rob Holliday and Alex Campanero and Dave Lord and Donnie Maltby. They're the ones that saw something in me in Elmira. And I have to admit, like I always wanted to be a soccer player over playing for Inter Milan over in Italy, and hockey was just kind of, I played for fun. But then all of a sudden, Miller Hicks, a guy named Miller Hicks, he was a goalie, and he was my coach one year, and he said, you really have something if you work at it. And I did. I started focusing more on watching all the goalies, and I used to go to the rink and watch, like Marty Quincy played for the Elmira Sugar Kings. A guy named Rob Shantz, also a goalie, that played for the Elmira Sugar Kings. Howie Brown, Steve Lee, Steve Utley. There was Stevie Lee, all these goalies. And then I started focusing a lot, and that's how I became, fairly good. And then when I got drafted to Guelph, I was so nervous. I didn't think I belonged there. And I remember Rob and Alex and those guys were just fantastic to me. And then my coach, Floyd Crawford, he played the crap out of me my first half of the year. I mean, I think I played 28 of the first 33 games. And then I never played again in the second half, except for the final game of the year. And he said to me, he goes, "Kid, I'm going to wear you out. We're going to get another goalie, and you're just going to watch and learn." And he actually spent a lot of time with me about watching the other goalies on the ice. Like Sean Simpson was playing for Oshawa or Sault Ste. Marie at the time, and other goalies. And so that's what I did. I mean, I'm trying to remember the great big guy that played for Kitchener. 6
Bales.
Yeah, Bales.
Darren Bales.
Yeah, Darren Bales. I used to watch him and just how he dominated the crease and didn't give it up. So that's where I picked up that from him. But anyways, and then it all worked out. The next year I had Ron Smith, who played the crap out of me. But and I do have to say this. I don't mean to jump all over the place, but my 3 years in the Platers organization, junior hockey is amazing. You become such good friends. And I'll just say, Steve knows this because he was on it, but I think we had 15 guys during Easter weekend 2020, all on WhatsApp that we played with up in Owen Sound. And I mean, the stories and the pictures and that we were sending back and forth. We were doing it till 3 a.m. It was freaking hilarious. So junior hockey was amazing time. Absolutely.
We've talked about your time in Owen Sound, and obviously for our listeners who are following along, Steve the player Mike the goalie. One of you guys fought Ty Domi.
Actually, that's not called fighting. That's called getting beat up. Okay.
And it was the goalie.
Yeah. Well, freaking Ron Hextall was my idol in junior then. I mean, I loved it. And again, please, people who may listen to this, at the time, it only hurt. Like, if you got beat up, it only hurt for a couple of days. Like, I mean, I was involved in the big brawl in Sudbury with LaForge. Do you know what I mean? And I got my nose broken and played 2 days later with no eyes open. And man, that puck moved fast that game in Sault Ste. Marie. But anyways, Ty Domi, that's a great story. I still remember that. That's awesome. I didn't know who he was. He's from the other division. And he turns around and tells me, "You hit me one more time in the nuts, kid, I'm going to kill you." Yeah. Okay. You're 5 foot what? And wow, man, that hurt. He could have beat me up a lot worse, but he just more or less ragdolled me. And I have to admit, Brian Hayton came to my rescue, who was our captain, but he was no match for him. But Brian and I became good friends after that. I made sure I let him know anybody was going to hit him, going for a puck ever again, because he saved my butt, because Ty Domi was a tough guy, and as we all know, so it was a good story.
Well, now, Steve, you talked about having to kind of make your mark in that way as a 15-year-old in Elmira, but it didn't really stop that side of your game. And if I'm not mistaken, there was at least one incident in your junior days, I believe it was in Kitchener, where there was a fight in the penalty box. And
that's a true story.
The local constabulary had to be called in to bring peace to the hockey rink.
I remember it like yesterday. The puck was shot. Mike did not stop the puck behind the net like he was supposed to in our zone. And the puck went around the boards and it went to my corner. And it was stuck in the corner and I had to go get it. And I didn't want to go down there, but I went and got it. And then I knew this overage defenseman, which his name was Rick Lane at that time. And he was about 6'2", 6'3", 220 pounds. And he was a tough guy at that moment. And I was 16 and I was about $175 soaking wet. Anyway, he came in, he was coming to run me and I knew it. I just turned around and gave him one of those and knocked out his upper teeth. And he went down and I went, that's going to hurt later. And all of a sudden, Rob Sangster, Shane Stevenson, a couple other guys just all tried to get at me. And thank God the linesman grabbed me and threw me in the penalty box. And I said, I got kicked out, right? And the guy referee says, "No, you only got 4 minutes." I said, "You got to give me 5. You got to give me 5." Anyway, he gives me 4 minutes, and there was like 15 minutes left in the third period. So I'm disappointed. I'm telling the referee every name in the book, just give me 5. End of my night. I'm going to go back going sound. Anyway, he didn't. 4 minutes off. The penalty's over. Rick Elaine drops his gloves, comes in the penalty box after me. It's a matinee game. I mean, my mom is up eating popcorn, right? And all of a sudden, I go back, and all of a sudden, the police are in there, and they're kind of trying to separate things. And I somehow got one hand loose, and I threw it over, and I hit him in the mouth again, and I could just see the blood splatter over like this. Well, thank God I got kicked out. He got kicked out. But the problem was, in 3 days, that was a Sunday, and then 3 days on Wednesday, Kitchener was coming for an evening game at 7:00 against us in Owen Sound, and he got his revenge. As soon as the puck dropped, he came over to me, cross-checked me in the neck a couple of times. I turtled like I was good at. He got kicked out, and I didn't see him for about another month or so. And then we were into the playoffs. So that was the story. And I remember Rob Sangster and Shane Stevenson, those guys are in the penalty box, and they're going, "You're a dead man. You're a dead man." And I'm like, "Oh, right. Where's the Sugar Kings?" When I want to play there, I was thinking maybe I go back to the Sugar Kings or something.
So Rick Elaine and I became roommates 2 years later. We were roommates in Maine Mariners in Boston's organization, and Rick would still bring that up, especially after a game. If we had a few pops, he would still bring that up. And he's from Guelph here too. And Rick and I became friends. But Rick was pissed. It's good though. But now he's in Philadelphia, so you're safe, Steve.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not able to cross the border.
How many line brawls were you guys in?
in North Bay against the
Was the
Centennials,
best.
we had a big brawl up there, Sean and Toski, and they had a tough team, and we had a tough team, and we had a nice brawl up there. And
It's on the internet.
yeah, it's on the internet. You can Google it. But anyway, that was my underage year. I was still 16, and Mike was 19, and we had a short bench because we were in a Sault Ste. Marie, Sudbury, North Bay trip, and we always got beat up a lot in those three buildings. But it was on the last of the night of the Sunday, and we were in North Bay, and we ended up getting a brawl. That was great. Everybody's on the ice throwing them and everything. So we got back into Owen Sound about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, and back to school. And I think I had a couple things over here in my cheek, and but that's what it's all about. And it was so much fun. And when you look back at it,
your junior career, Steve, took you from Owen Sound with the Platers over to the other side with Kingston. And we had David Linger on a recent episode of this podcast. He had nothing but terrible things to say about you, but that's
I expected that.
We talked to him though about being in Kingston, where there's some degree of hockey royalty. Don Cherry, Doug Gilmour.
Yeah.
There is some other royalty associated with the city as well. There's a big rock band out of there, Canadian bunch of bumpkins playing some good music called the Tragically Hip.
Yes.
And Dan Aykroyd is, I don't know if he's right in Kingston, but from the area. And you had some encounters with those?
Did. I was blessed. Greg Clancy and I got traded to Kingston for Justin Morrison, and we end up in Kingston. And Greg's from Kingston, so his sister's dating the drummer for the Tragically Hip. All of a sudden, I don't know really who the Tragically Hip are, because I'm living in Owen Sound, and they were small at that time. They weren't huge. I get to Kingston, and I get to go to 3 concerts backstage, meet Gord and the whole band, and through our teammate's sister, because she was dating him. But what an experience! I meet Dan Aykroyd. Dan had a bar in Kingston, so we got to go there, and through.
You actually went to a bar?
Dan Aykroyd had a bar.
No, I said you actually went to a bar?
Well, it was an autograph signing, so it was mandatory. So anyway, I got to meet like Doug Gilmour, Kirk Muller, Don Cherry. I met Dick Cherry. Don's brother was our coach, so I got to meet all these people and then I ended up playing with Brett Lindros, Chris Gratton. I got to meet Eric Lindros. I'm the whole, a lot of big stars that became, and David Ling, and a lot of guys that Craig Rivet. And anyway, we had a great group of guys in Kingston, and Mike Allison was our assistant coach, and Dave was their head coach. And Kingston was a lot of fun. And I played 5 seasons, and my last 2 seasons was obviously my best in regards to performance. And I got to end up at the end of my 5th season, John Ferguson Sr. offered me a 2-year contract with the Ottawa Senators, and he got to see me play a lot in Ottawa because he was the general manager of Ottawa at the time, or president or whatever. But so yeah, I have great things, and my billets in Kingston were fantastic. I did work for my billet was a funeral director, so I got to help him out a little bit on the side to make some extra cash, and that was interesting as well. But we moved on. Let's move on. That's another day.
No, I don't think we're moving on.
No, we need one story.
How do you help a funeral director?
Well, my billet was a funeral director, but he loved hockey, and that's why he billeted. And he said, Steve, you know what? If I could use extra help, and would you like to make some extra cash? And I said, sure. So about 3 or 4 in the morning, the door would knock, and he'd say, we got a live one. I said, okay. So we'd get in the car and we'd drive to Gananoque way, and we would get the Hearst and then drive back to Kingston and do our thing. And then we drive back to Gananoque way and get the situation all looked after. And then we'd hit the drive-through at McDonald's on the way back, and I'd get into bed for a couple hours before I go to school. But yeah, that was a lot of fun and interesting. So anyway, we moved on from there. We got on to the.
That's so disgusting. Oh.
So you were embalming bodies, is what we're saying.
Yes.
I was learning a trade that I thought I might want to use in the future.
How many times have you used it since you first embalmed?
None.
Mike, for you, for you, the transition was from playing right into coaching. Was that in your mind as you wrapped up your playing career that you were going to get into coaching?
No, I wasn't going to at all. I was a little bit different. I wasn't playing the video games like all my teammates were when we were playing pro and that. I took up guitar lessons and took correspondence courses. So when I was done playing, I was just going to school for economics and finance, and then I was going to get into the real world. But while I was going to school at U of G, Marlon Muellard asked me to help coach the hockey team. And, Chris Clancy, Tim Spitzig, Matty Mullen, Mark Gowan were on the team. And so that's how I got into coaching. And I coached with Paul Bridges and Marlon, and we ended up winning the CIU championship that year. We beat New Brunswick in Maple Leaf Gardens. And then a gentleman named Doug Flug, who was with the Guelph Storm, the fitness coach in that, he brought to my attention that they might be looking for a goalie coach. And so he introduced me to Mike Kelly. And then Mike Kelly introduced me to Alan Miller, and they hired me. And that was in 1997, 98. And we went to the Memorial Cup that year. My goalie was Chris Madden, was our number one goalie. And so I stayed with the Storm, I think, for 12 years, which was just a real pleasure. I really enjoyed it. I really did.
Mike was so good to me, actually, growing up playing goalie. I actually got a set of Chris Madden pads. And
Did you really?
I wore those TPS Louisville. Yeah. Wore those for quite some time. I actually lived with Mike in Guelph. So for all those former goalies that Mike coached, I feel your pain.
Yeah.
You got to deal with it for a couple hours. I had to go home to it all the time.
Yeah, I'm pretty intense. I would have to say that.
A little.
And that's why. What was that, Steve?
I was going to say Christopher tried out for the Guelph Storm, obviously, potentially a Guelph, and they played for the Guelph Dominators.
Yeah.
Yeah, Adam Dennis and Danny Taylor already had that goaltending situation wrapped up. I was just there as a guy to give them some time off during shooting drills, I think. But
correct, exactly.
It worked well.
And someone that for me to yell at rather than Danny and Adam.
Yeah, they liked me being there because Mike was harder on me because I was related to him, so he could say whatever he wanted without any ramifications.
Yeah.
Mike, what was it like when you went down to training camp in Boston and you got the likes of Andy Moe, Ray Bourque, Cam Neely?
It was amazing. It really was. My first year, again, I was still not a very mature individual when it came to understanding the pro, what it really meant. But I went to my first training camp, and actually I have to tell you, my dad went down, and Bob and Lulu Waters came down as well. And that was a great event, seeing them in the stands and that. But I'll be honest with you, Reggie Lemlin and Andy Moog were the two nicest guys. They were fantastic. They knew I was no threat. They knew eventually, hopefully, it might have been changing of the guard eventually, but it never did happen. I didn't accomplish what I wanted to, but that's another chapter. But it was a great experience. Al Peterson, a great big 6'6" defenseman, was fantastic to me. A guy named Bruce Shoebottom. Lou Crawford was great. It was awesome. But you just played. I was in such awe that I just wanted to stop the puck, and I actually did fairly well. I won goalie of the training camp there. But it was kind of interesting. I remember we were getting bag skated, and Reggie comes up to me and goes, son, you don't pass me ever again. And I'm like, and I'm like, oh, okay. So then you just skate beside them. And like, again, when I started getting into the pro hockey, it was kind of the changing of the way you were. You started coming to training camp ready for training camp, not getting in shape at training camp. So that was just kind of neat. I learned that the first 2 years is that you don't show up at Andy or Reggie. And they were great. I mean, Andy, I went to his house for dinner once during training camp. Reggie and I were roommates. I really liked them. So yeah, it was a great first year. But I was too nice. I'll be honest with you. I was too nice. Looking back, that's one thing I'll tell someone: have respect for them, but don't be too nice. Yeah.
Steve, you talked about the last couple of years for you in the league where you started coming into your own offensively. Final season, 35 goals, 98 points. And at the time, as you wrapped up your major junior career, you held the record for most games played. Were you aware of that distinction as it approached?
Well, the linesman told me a couple of times during that 5th season, he goes, "You've been in the league longer than me." And I says, and I'm getting tired and sore. And I said, "I'm riding this bus through Cornwall all the way down to Windsor and all the way up to Sault Ste. Marie and whatever." He goes, you got another year in you?" I said, "I might come back for another year yet." He goes, that'll be 6. That's illegal. And I said, "Well, I'll see what I can do." But yeah, like I knew I had 317 regular season games, and then, or something like that. And then I knew I had to play at least, 10 exhibition games each year, plus some playoffs in there. And I was ready to leave the Ontario Hockey League. I loved the league, but I was ready. I played the minimum and the maximum you could possibly play. And I knew I had a record, but it wasn't a good record.
Underager to an overager.
Yes. And I remember some of the, Bert Templetons and Larry Mavertys and guys like that were old, and Brian Kilray's on the other side at that time. They were saying to me, "Geez," they were yelling at me from the bench going, "It's time to retire," or something. Even the other players are making fun of me going, "Hey, old man, hey, old man." Even David Ling, I watched the last episode. He even called me an old man. He was my line mate. Even Kelly Corbs, my centerman, he used to call me that, the old man, all the time. I'm like, I got to get out of this league. I got to get into the East Coast Hockey League or something like that, or where I could hide, and I won't be the oldest one.
Okay, real quick though, you just mentioned 2 names, Corpse and Ling. And when we go to Kingston and we're in the arena, we see those jerseys hanging up there in the rafters.
It makes me sick to my stomach.
Okay, I just want to make sure. So when are we going to have the Steve Parson banner hanging?
I don't know. I want to I want those 2 guys to vouch for me and say I was the left winger for the 2 years that they got a lot of points, a lot of goals, and they both got drafted. And I'm like, how about some love on the left side? I got nothing. I asked Kirk Maltby and Andrew Burnett up in Owen Sound, give me some love. I get no love up there. So anyway, that's the way people want to do it. That's fine.
Mike, you got your start in the OHL in that old as he puts his hand on his head. This is like Christmas every year. This is all this is. Yeah. Mike giggling, me giggling, and Steve going on some rant. Mike, you got your start in that old Guelph arena downtown. Where's the craziest place you've played in a visiting rink?
Craziest place? Well, I still think maybe my first game in Windsor when I got pop dumped on me during the play. Like they stood above you and pop is just coming down, and like even a hot dog landed on that freaking in my crease. And so I'd say Windsor with that old barn they used to have and they could stand above you. But I think that my favorite rink to play in was Kitchener. I'll be honest with you. It's one of the best away rinks I've ever played in junior. Because the fans, they love Kitchener and we always had such rivalries, and I had a lot of family there and friends that would come and watch me. So I like that. And Sudbury, because I always said to myself before every game, there's no way that Wolf is going across the ice. And again, I've got a lot of history up in Sudbury. When we played them my final year up in Owen Sound, they think they scored twice in overtime to put us out. And then then Jeff Perry scores on a fake wraparound, and he faked a wraparound, and David Gaverty left the crease and he shot it in the net. And then Coleman had to get escorted by the police out, which was a referee. So, but to this day, I say both goals didn't count. So,
Steve, you got me thinking when you mentioned being in the league for as long as you were, riding those buses when you're with Kingston, all the way to Windsor, up to Cornwall, up to Sault Ste. Marie. What are some of your memories of maybe the worst weather you were in, the scariest rides?
Well, I remember playing. Mike wasn't playing for Owen Sound this season. He left. It was the next season. We missed the playoffs. We had a terrible hockey team, And we lost to Kitchener in Kitchener, a matinee game, 10-2. And our coach at that time said, I don't want to hear a peep on the bus all the way to Owen Sound. And when we get to Owen Sound, you're going to put your gear back on and we're going to go practice. So all the way to Owen Sound from Kitchener, we lost 10-2. We're going to miss the playoffs. Nobody likes anything that's going on. It's bad. And all of a sudden, one of the teammates was clicking the bus seats that were going click, 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 click. And all of a sudden you could hear people just like laugh, but hold their breath. And all of a sudden the coach stood up, told Eddie, the bus driver, to pull it over. Eddie pulled it over and everybody's laughing, but under their breath. And he says, stand up, whoever did it, stand up. Well, nobody would stand up. And then the coach kept walking further to the back of the bus. And he goes, who is it? Finally, one person stood up and said, it was me. He says, get your stuff and get off the bus. Anybody else? One other guy stood up. It was me. Get out your stuff and get off the bus. Well, it's a snowstorm. Anybody else? Well, I didn't have the guts to say it was me, but it was me. I stood on the bus. I looked outside. It was freezing out there. So Eddie, start the bus and let's go. Well, the two players at that time walked up to the OPP station and they got a ride escorted from the OPP, but we got into the rink and we're all skating end to end, like doing drills, no pucks. And these guys come in late. They're laughing at us because they were delayed at least an hour and a half-ish. So I should have got off the bus because I didn't want to bag skate. Anyway, that was the funniest time in my 5 seasons of being on the bus.
Mike, you might have taken.
What about the one? Okay, so we mentioned we got into a brawl against North Bay, and our coach before said, "There's no fighting this game. Okay, there's no fighting going to happen." And one of their tough guys went after one of our finesse guys, Graydon Reed. So our Ray Edwards, who's coaching in Calgary, there jumps off the bench, and we get to a bench clearing brawl. So after, our coach makes the bus driver turn the heat off for the whole ride from North Bay to Owen Sound. It's a snowstorm. Plus, we didn't get our food. Like, no offense, but I mean, I'm a $160. Steve's probably heavier than me when I was playing. Man, I need my food, you know? I was freaking starved. So and we had a veteran team. If you remember, that was the year Oshawa beat Kitchener, and we had a really good team too. I really do believe if we had a coach, we would have went further. But that was, I still remember that because he's like, you guys aren't getting your subs. And meanwhile, I think I could have handled our coach and forced him to give us our subs. but you just didn't do that back then. But that was probably the stupid, like one of the worst things I've ever seen. But then Steve told me about the next year because I played with those guys that went off the bus. So that was a great story.
Who were the two guys that took the blame?
I can't mention the names. It's I signed a document that says you can't disclose it. It's kind of like a lawsuit, you know. But
one is Strozzi.
I don't know who they were. I forgot about those times.
If you forgot about those,
give the nickname of the other guy.
Rubber Legs, maybe. I don't know.
His name was mentioned earlier in the conversation, right?
Right.
Finesse guy.
He didn't make it. He didn't play one game in the National Hockey League. Let me leave it there.
But a fantastic guy. One of the fastest skaters I've ever seen in my life. Oh.
Yeah.
So if you thought Elmira was a bit of an outpost, maybe you didn't growing up there because you got that hometown pride, but then you're going to Owen Sound in the Ontario Hockey League. Definitely, well, it's still to this day the smallest market in the league. Great community, love the arena, etc. But I bring that up to talk about one of your future outposts, Steve, and that is Thunder Bay. I've got a great fondness for the Lakehead. Worked up there for a year, felt like 6, but
yes.
What do you remember of the time, or what was it like? I mean, what's your closest road trip?
Oh, we would always fly from 99% of the time. We'd fly from Thunder Bay to Toronto, and then get into a bus in Toronto, and then we would make our week-long trip. We'd go hit Saginaw, we would hit Flint, we would hit Muskegon, we would hit Detroit. So that's what we did normally. But when we didn't win a couple games and the ownership or the coach would say, we're not flying this trip. We're going to take the long way. So we would get on the bus. And ever seen Slapshot? And the guys are playing cards at the back. And the team bus comes up beside, and there's another group of over there. And that's what it was like in that bus. A lot of fun.
Was this about the same time, Mike, you were living on a beach playing somewhere in the States, or?
No, Steve and I, my last year, I was in Muskegon. And you have to ask Steve about this because we got in a line brawl. And Steve's sitting on the bench while I'm fighting his team's goalie. And he's watching his brother fight.
I'm sitting beside Jason Firth and rival Fulham, two former Kitchener Rangers that we did not like each other before I got there, but we're sitting on the bench together. And my brother skates from the goalie crease into our penalty box after our tough guy, that Mel Engelstead, and he made it to the National Hockey League with Washington and Dallas. And Mike started giving him a blocker, and all of a sudden, rival Fulham and Jason Firth look at me and go, "Your brother is a dead man." I said, "Listen, this isn't the Kitchener Ranger days, okay? Just calm down a little bit." And then my coach, Tom Warden, comes down at me and goes, "Your brother is a dead man," when he comes to Thunder Bay. And I'm like, why don't I just go put the other jersey on? Because I don't feel any love over here. Anyway. But
what was going through your mind, Mike?
Well, their tough guy had a hold of our tough guy, and then their second tough guy was beating up our tough guy. You know what I mean? And so no one was helping him. So that was just me. I just react. And let's just say it was another Ty Domi experience.
Okay.
Oh my God, did it hurt. He ripped the crap out of the back of my neck with my jersey and like beat the living crap out of my back. Like he was giving me side punches and kidney shots. It was because he couldn't get my helmet off. Because at that point you have the molded mask, and where the other one was the SK2000. It freaking, you could tear the mask off. But yeah, let's just say it's another fight I lost, but it was fun. But my coach Bill Stewart, freaking, oh, did he hate me for that? Because I got suspended for 5 games or something like that. And we were the strongest team on our side, and they were the strongest team on their side. And oh God, long story.
Okay, hang on. I want to take just this goalie fighting thing a half a step further. And remember, I'm the outsider in this group, okay? I've never been in a goalie fight or a hockey fight. But you're just talking about going to the penalty box to blocker a guy. From the outside looking in, Mike, I've always thought about, like, I'm sorry, players drop their gloves. What's the code say about a goalie blockering somebody?
Well, you only get one shot. That's it, because you're blocking. Yeah.
With Dallas and Washington. But anyway, you gave him a good blocker in the chops, but he could take it.
Yes, he could. But most people could not take it. So,
no.
Yeah. So, and then your left hand goes off, and then you just hold on. And goalies have such great balance that's the key in a fight is grab them at the biceps and balance. And so you don't really get beat up. But unless they're those two guys, and then, yeah, you get beat up.
I think it's so funny because anybody that knows Mike off the ice, he's completely different.
Yes.
He's super quiet, relaxed, and then you get him talking about his playing days, and he's blockering guys in the face in a penalty box.
If anybody wants the real laugh, and again, I know hockey has totally changed, but it's no different than the movie Slapshot. But look up North Bay Centennials and Owen Sound Platers, and there's a clip of our bench clearing brawl, and no one got hurt. Like no one, people got beat up a little bit and stuff, but it's kind of funny. Like back then, it was the way hockey is. Hockey now is like skill and everything, but it's a good video. It really is.
I brought up you on a beach because I remember as a kid going down, I don't know where it was, whether it was Maine or somewhere, but we were going to a beach, came to visit you and your wife at the time. It was right after Madison was born, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was, Steve, you can answer this after because you were down in South Carolina, but what was it like playing hockey at night and going to the beach during the day?
Mike, you can answer that.
Well, actually, Old Orchard Beach is kind of like South. Is it South Bend? No, South over there on Lake Huron. Is it called South Bend? No,
I have no
Grand
idea.
Bend?
Grand Bend. Sorry, my apologies. I've never been there. Okay, Grand Bend. It was deserted in the wintertime, but just the place just hopping in the summer. So during the hockey season, we just lived there. It was beautiful. It was right on the ocean. But when we stayed the one summer and played roller hockey with Barry Trotz and the Portland Pirates, it was amazing. Like just packed sardines. It was awesome.
Steve, what was South Carolina like?
Well,
You had an interesting owner, I believe.
yes, Jerry Zucker. He owned the Hudson Bay Company in Canada, and anyway, long story short, in Charleston, there's a place called Kiowa Island, and they hosted the World Championship golf tournament one season, and so I got tickets. Another guy and I got tickets, and we said, well, let's go out there and watch a couple after practice, after pregame. Let's just go out there and have lunch and watch a couple holes just to kind of kill the day. Well, we ended up watching a few more, and I'm like, I don't feel like going to the rink tonight. But anyway, we had to go to the rink. But anyway, but it was just a beautiful day. There's guys playing golf, like, the big shots were out there, Tiger and, all these guys. And it was awesome. Like just beautiful ocean view golf course. And you're watching these pros play and having a bit of lunch. And then you come back and, you're just excited to get on the ice, and you're going to the rink and everybody's got shorts and flip flops on, t-shirts, and they're drinking some cold beer in the stands, and there's 10 to 15,000 people in the stands, and you're excited to perform for them. And we are at that time we were affiliated with the Buffalo Sabres, and we had guys going up to Rochester and Rochester guys going up to Buffalo on like lots of movement in throughout the three different teams. And you knew that you just needed a one shot, like one call up, maybe a good game could do it. Or and Rick Vye was their head coach, so Rick was in good communication all the way to the top of Buffalo. And it was a very exciting time, and I enjoyed it a lot. Like days off, we'd practice and then we'd go play golf and Rick would play with us. So we were coaching or playing golf with the coach after practice and having a lot of fun.
So what's wrong with your golf game then? Why does your big brother always beat you?
Rick said I had too much loft in my game. Lack of blank talent. That's what he told me.
Okay. Mike, if you get an opportunity, play golf with Steve, okay? Just bring the pens because you're going to pee your pants. I mean, he is freaking hilarious. Like, he might hit left one hole, then hits right the next hole.
I can drive the cart good. That's what I can do.
Mike, I wanted to come back to a name you mentioned quite a bit back when you talked about transitioning into coaching in Guelph, and that was Mike Kelly, who was the architect of that championship team in the late 90s and then came back and helped the Storm back to another Memorial Cup. And the word intense has come up a couple of times. I remember watching Mike in the press box as a general manager, and he was pretty intense. What did he mean to the Storm organization?
Well, he's always going to be a pillar for sure. I mean, he's the one that started them or brought them back, I should say. And then the one that, he returned again and again. So really nice man. And I mean, I bet you one day he'll be, if he's not already, and I apologize for not knowing, but probably the Guelph Hall of Fame. I mean, but he is a class act. Like he really cares about the players and about each member of the organization, from the business side to the on ice side. He is just a really nice gentleman. And my time there, I had some great GMs. Alan Miller was phenomenal, and still a friend today. Jason Brooks was just, wow, seeing how he matured over the years, and just a fantastic guy. And he's done so well in Listowel as well. And then I even had Dave Barr as well, who was a very intense, attention to detail gentleman. Absolutely. So, but Mike Kelly, I'll always have a soft spot for him. But it was Alan Miller who actually hired me. But Mike recommended him. Mike recommended Alan to hire me. So
what is George Burnett really like?
Hey, George. Again, George and I are friends. I just know that his bark is worse than his bite. It really is. Very intense. Hates losing. And again, we have some great stories because he was the coach of Niagara Falls that year that they put us out my last year. And then my first year as the goalie coach of the Storm, he was the head coach. And Rick Elaine was the assistant coach. So back to Rick Elaine again. Steve never came to one of those games ever.
No. I always asked for free tickets, and somehow you said Rick didn't have any left.
Yeah, exactly. So, so George and I, George is a very intense guy, but a great friend, and he's good at what he does, and I think he's really adjusted for from coaching back in 1989 to now coaching today. He has been able to adjust. He and realized you have to deal with people differently than you did back then. Back then it was intimidation. And now it's you have to get to know every one of your players, and you have to treat them all differently. So very nice guy. He really is. And if you ever come up next time you're interviewing him, just realize his bark is worse than his bite. Okay.
He's never been anything but kind to myself anyway about giving in
Okay.
interview times. As long as there was one time I showed up late to the rink and I was trying to search for one player. Because you have time constraints before the game. You have to, it's an hour and a half, Farzi, I think you have before puck drop, you can interview a player. And I think I was like, it might've been 87 minutes before puck drop. And he came over to me and he looked at me and he goes, "What time is it?" And I'm like, "Uh-oh." And he goes, "Why are you here so late?" And I said, "I'm really sorry. I had something come up with work, whatever." And he goes, "This is your one freebie," and just walked away. I was like, "Goo."
That's where you just let it go in one ear and out the other.
Yeah, I've just been on time. That's all.
I like George a lot. I'm happy that he's had success here, and what a team they had that year. Can you? I mean, to me that was great to see them coming back on every team. Oh my goodness,
that was crazy. Real quick, Steve. We talk about coaches and guys who may be a little serious. A guy who's often up in the Kitchener media room. He's a bit of a hockey legend around Waterloo. During your time with was it Canada or Ontario's under 17? Jerry Harrigan.
Jerry coached when I played for the Sure Kings, he was the coach of the Siskins, and he yelled at me a lot. But what happened was I tried out for Team Ontario. Jerry was hard-nosed, and I don't know about other hockey players, but I like that because I find if he's hard-nosed and he demands hard work, and he got the best out of me. Jerry and I bonded really well in Team Ontario under 17, and then he got into the OHL with the Hamilton Dukes and also the Owen Sound Attack or Platers, and then I got traded to Kingston, so he never got to coach me, but we always kept in touch, and I have 100% respect for Jerry Harrigan.
Before we let you guys go, Steve, Mike mentioned a few moments ago that he always gets the better of you on the golf course because you're a better comedian than golfer. And that first year in Owen Sound, Mike even admits maybe not the best big brother to the rookie coming into the Ontario Hockey League. What's the level of sibling rivalry like to this day?
On the golf course?
Anywhere.
You know what? He's 50 years old now ish, and I'm 47. So he's calmed down a lot. And, but going back 10 years ago, he still had a lot of fire in his belly, but now that he's getting over 50, he's slowing down, which I don't mind.
Bring out a soccer ball though and watch them both go.
Pardon me?
I said, bring out a soccer ball though and watch you both go.
Oh, absolutely. I'll run down the field for about 2 seconds and I'll be out of air.
All right, real quick. We've covered the majority of stories I can remember your father, my grandfather, George, talking about in the garage over a couple brown bottles. But do you guys, either of you have a story maybe about the other one that you want to tell, or do we hit them all and maybe some should be left for in a garage and not on a public forum?
Mike can go first.
Or about yourself.
Steve, let's see. Well, let's just say I'd like to ask him a question. Okay, so my first 2 years of junior, I never missed curfew once. I want to know how many times he missed curfew his first year of junior versus my last year of junior. And that'll just show you how, like, he was more part of the guys than I was. I had a girlfriend back in Guelph, so I'd go back to Guelph almost every night to go see her. And she is my wife today. But Steve, like, I always got paid.
What
every
happens
week.
on the road stays on the road.
I'm not sure if you got your paycheck once in your first year junior. But we had a great group of guys up and on sound. And Steve fit in like Steve, Jeff Grant fit in, and Kirk Malpe and Trent Call fit in like a glove. But it was neat hearing. I'm sitting in the dressing room trying to get ready for a game or practice, and they're talking about my brother, and I'm like, the kid is 16 years old. What the fuck? Oh my God. You're supposed to be doing that at 19, 20, not at 16. Like, he was just out with them all the time and having fun. And meanwhile, I'm with my girlfriend. So that's my only stories is Steve had a lot. I was far more serious. No, Steve was serious, but I didn't know how to, separate hockey and like I lived hockey 24 hours a day in junior. I didn't know when you left the rink, maybe you should, hang out with the boys and all that stuff. But I tried to earn their trust and respect by my practice habits and my game results rather than going to their parties and stuff like that. So
I always watch Slapshot on the bus, on the bus road trips. And I wanted to be like Paul Newman.
Oh God.
So you watch Slapshot and you think of Paul Newman.
I wasn't sure if Steve was going to tell a story about TD Bank.
That's for in the garage.
Okay. Just wanted to double check.
Or the follow-up podcast with the Parson brothers.
When I see Farwell down at Block 3, then we'll talk about it.
Deal. When you got traded from Owen Sound to Kingston, did that phone call go a lot like the phone call in Slapshot?
Yes.
When the goalie wants.
Trade me right frigging now.
Hey,
Morris, you can't speak.
So Christopher,
yeah,
I'll say this, and I'm sure all of the guys that you interview that played junior by when COVID ends, we're having a Plater alumni party up at my cottage, and like it's unbelievable how many guys said that they would come. Like we've got Sean White, who's in Phoenix, Arizona, who said he'd come up. Like it's going to be awesome. Like that's what junior hockey is about, is the friendships you make. And even though like the first year we didn't make the playoffs, the second year we got put out after in the first round, and third year we underachieved, but just being on the bus and all those experiences, I mean, the guys are friends for life, and that's what junior hockey is about. Yes, it is about chasing your dream, but the friendships that I had made with the Platers and still have today is amazing. Absolutely.
So Popey, it's on you to score us an invite to this party. Yeah. And before it gets too out of control, we'll just roll a little tape and have podcasts forever.
Exactly.
Well, how about this? Even our GM is invited and will come. Like Rob, my hat goes off to Rob and Joe. Fantastic owners. Like they were hard on us, but I can go down to the electric plating company there on Victoria and walk in and say hi to them, and they treat you like gold, and they're great guys. Like Mr. Holiday, Joe is much older, but still going, and still remembers you and tells stories. I still remember him smoking cigars behind my net in my first 2 years.
I thought that was the red light going on, but it wasn't. It was the cigar.
It was the red from the cigar. Yeah. But even Rob and I are good friends. He's even better friends with Steve. And the guy traded him.
Yeah. I remember getting traded. I cried all the way. I drove home from Owen Sound to Elmira. I cried. And I didn't obviously like him at that minute, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I got to meet Gord Downey.
There you go. Real quick, one final question, because I'd get in trouble if I didn't ask. On Flamingo Drive, during those years growing up, we talked about that there might have been a couple altercations. Who was the toughest not brother. Who is the toughest sibling?
Your mother.
Yes,
There you go.
absolutely. Oh my God.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm still scared of her.
Yes, oh crap.
You know what? Now we better clarify again real quick that Chris's mother is the sister to these two guys, because that almost comes across as a mother joke there for a second. Who's the
good
toughest
point.
sibling? Ah, your mother.
Yeah,
Be clear about this.
Darlene is born in 68, and Steve and I used to hide in the washroom. Remember that, Steve?
If
Like,
she
we were
was
so
an
scared of her.
defenseman, she would have made the National Hockey League as the first female.
And 5 foot, what is she? 5'6"? How tall is your mom?
Yeah,
I look at her, I see
5'7", 5'8".
6'2", 6'3",
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No. She could win a UFC. Is that what it is? Fight.
Yeah.
She tapped me out.
Yeah.
That was just last week, though.
Good point.
Yeah. No.
Just had to get that in.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah.
All right,
Guys,
gentlemen.
it's been a ton of fun. A ton of fun.
Hey, it was a pleasure seeing you, Mike, and Chris. Always a pleasure. Chris, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
When's the big question coming?
Long time, buddy.
Are you sure?
Long time.
Come
You know,
on,
the
bud.
good thing is we haven't stopped recording yet. So
Long time.
But I want to go to the stag party and the stag and dough, you know?
Well, I hear you have a nice cottage. We can have it at. Perfect. Thanks.
Oh, absolutely, buddy. You can come up to the cottage. Yeah, absolutely. We'll strip you down, tie you to a pole, throw honey on you, and let the black bears have their way.
I thought we were done with OHL stories.
only for this week. Only for this week. Guys, it's been a blast. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Chris. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
Stay safe and healthy, guys.
See ya.